It's a landslide. That's how President Nicolas Maduro reacted to the news that candidates from his United Socialist Party, the PSUV, had won the governorships in the immense majority of Venezuela's 23 seats. As the results came out, the government supporters went wild with delight across the country. This was the scene that Telesio captured in one of the country's largest working-class neighborhoods, Petare, in the east of the capital. President Nicolas Maduro joined his supporters outside the Miraflores Palace to welcome what he called a crushing victory.
61.4, que anoten en Washington.
61.4 turnout. Washington, take note of that. Secondly, at the moment we have 17 governorships, an absolute victory. Chavismo has swept the board with 17. The opposition have 5. And now, I tell you, I recognize all the results of the elections in all the announcements from the National Electoral Council. A victory in 17 governorships. We have complete faith in the transparency of the electoral system, so I asked the head of the National Constituent Assembly to order an audit of the electoral process from A to Z, a complete audit.
So let's take a look at the results announced by the National Electoral Council. With also almost 96% of the ballots counted, candidates from the governing PSUV had won in 17 of Venezuela's 23 states. Those are the one on red on this map. The opposition had won in 5 states, the blue ones. That is 2 more than they had before and includes the important border states of Zulia and Táchira. The result in Bolivar State in the southeast is still too close to call. Just to put those results in context, here are some other quick facts about Sunday's regional elections in Venezuela. The turnout was higher than usual at over 61%, 7% more than in the last regional elections. That's out of more than 18 million possible voters. Candidates from the governing Socialist Party took 54% of the total vote compared with 45% for the opposition. And finally, Sunday's election was the 23rd of its kind since the beginning of Venezuela's Bolivarian Revolution. International guests who accompanied the ballot said the vote had gone smoothly and the process was transparent. Here's David Abdullah from Trinidad and Tobago's Movement for Social Justice.
From what I've been able to observe myself in all of the stations, electoral centers that I visited, we can see the system working. The process is as laid out by the CNE, where people first of all check their ID cards and then they verify their identification by way of the electronic thumbprint, and then they're allowed to go to the voting machine and vote. They take their physical ballot after using the electronic voting machine. They take their physical ballot and put it in the ballot box, and then they go and sign the register, where their name is located in the register with their ID card and number and their age and their gender. And they also put a thumbprint, they put their thumb in the ink and also put that in the register. So the process is as it is laid out. There are witnesses from the different political parties who are present at each table.
Leaders of Venezuela's opposition coalition, the MOOD, have rejected the results. They say the government must have manipulated the vote.
Estamos en un momento muy grave para la República, para el país.
We are facing very serious times for the Republic, for the country. We are facing an electoral system that doesn't give confidence, and only a few believe that this electoral system is transparent and can provide security to those who vote in our country.
Also, much of the international media ignored Sunday's election in Venezuela, only to begin reporting on it when the opposition called foul. So let's look, for example, at this article on the BBC's webpage, giving prominence as usual to the opposition's suggestion that there was fraud. Although the only evidence it cites is the opposition saying that the vote can't have been clean because they lost. The New York Times has a similar message in its headline. Nicolas Maduro's party defines the polls. It says again the article concentrates on opposition voices. However, Sunday's results in Venezuela have been welcome in many parts of Latin America. The Bolivarian president, Evo Morales, tweeted his congratulations to the Venezuelan people. In a first post, he said that democracy had prevailed over intervention and conspiracy. In a second tweet, he wrote, "Congrats, my friend Maduro, his team, and the anti-imperialist people of Venezuela. Unity is the guarantee of dignity within a Latin American identity." And the former president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya, also tweeted that this was another great victory for the Socialist Party and a defeat for the aims of the United States and Venezuela's extreme right. And finally, ex-president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, also published on his Twitter account, "Venezuela lived a democratic festival. Bolivarian revolution won big in regional elections. Glory to its people." Before the results were in, we spoke to Lucas Kerner of Venezuela Analysis in Caracas about what was at stake in these elections.
The Venezuela's Bolivarian Revolution is in a catch-22 that regardless of how many elections that are held, and even those that are held in which the opposition wins, Venezuela is going to continue to be demonized as a dictatorship. And even those elections in which the opposition wins, in the case of the National Assembly elections in 2015, in which, as Tatiana described, they gain control of the National Assembly and they use as a Trojan horse to overthrow the executive. Right now, we're really fighting over who is going to be the possible winner in 2018. Is this 8 million these 8 million voters who turned out on July 30th, are these voters who are voting for Maduro to continue to or another presidential candidate to stay in power, continue the Chavista project, or were they voting for more demands related to opposition violence and the economic question? I mean, this is the truth of 30th July in many ways, is both the government and the opposition have characterized it as going to come out with this vote. Is this bump, is this what Maduro has called a rebirth of Chavismo? Is this real, or is this just a something that is completely illusory, as the opposition claims, and that they can further push towards crippling and eroding the government's base of support?
More news in a minute. Stay with us. So we plan to go live to our correspondent in Caracas, Reagan Devines, in a few minutes. But first, here are some stories that are making news right now. Dominica is still recovering from Hurricane Maria that hit the island on September 17. During his daily press briefing, the island's Prime Minister, Roosevelt Skerritt, called on the general public to work together with government to help the country recover.
What we say and what we do as a people will determine how fast we recover from this hurricane. And our efforts, we'll all have different views as to what should be done, how it should be done, when it should have been done, who should have done it. But at the end of the day, it is not finger pointing that's going to push this country forward. It is not finger pointing that's going to make our country a better place. It is about we working together with a common purpose and a common determination.
And still on the subject of Hurricanes Irma and Maria, we head to Antigua and Barbuda, where the government says that a Chinese firm has shown interest in establishing a town in Barbuda. Barbuda was severely damaged by Irma last month, which left the island uninhabitable for the first time in 300 years. According to the government statement, the unidentified Chinese firm has proposed to build a high-rise apartment building that could resist hurricane winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. In the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, Telesur has been traveling across Puerto Rico to talk to locals about their view on the assistance or lack thereof from Washington.
Although Hurricane Maria passed over Puerto Rico weeks ago, its effects are still being felt nationwide. The country's communications are not fully functioning, and millions are still without electricity. And this is expected to continue to at least the end of the year. Outside of San Juan, this is what we saw.
All of us in the neighborhood were so united when the disaster happened. We all gathered to clean the roads and clear the debris. We have been together throughout this all, but it is hard to see how everything was left and how we are not receiving any help from anyone else.
The damages are estimated to be in the hundreds of millions. Infrastructure has been obliterated. And for the people in Puerto Rico, the main thing that they need is basic support and basic aid, such as food and water.
Here there's no electricity. Look at the light pole. We don't have any water or electricity here, and we haven't seen anyone fix it or clearing up the debris. We haven't seen water, just the water trucks that are helping us now.
The support from the White House seems to follow the unpredictability of Donald Trump, his tweets and his actions, day in, day out. This is what the majority of the island's inhabitants think, and they are doing their best to overcome the tragedy.
Trump came to insult the Puerto Ricans. This is what I think. I don't know what the others think. We, the Puerto Ricans, feel offended because of the things he said.
Even though Puerto Ricans are officially United States citizens, they are a free and associated state, and they are waiting for more assistance from Washington to help them in the wake of the hurricane.
Never in all of my life could I have imagined that we, the youth, could have lived through something like this. I'm only 19 years old. I couldn't have thought that anything like this would happen.
Maria was one of the strongest hurricanes to hit the island in the last 80 years. And it has not only affected the people on the island, but it has also shed light on the complex political relationship between the island and other nations in the continent.
In Ecuador, the National Court of Justice rejected on Sunday the habeas corpus appeal presented by the defense team for Ecuador's Vice President Jorge Glass, who has been in preventative detention since October 2nd. Glass claims to be a victim of revenge from the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht and accuses the Ecuadorian justice system of giving up against political and media pressure.
All this is a show of revenge by a corrupt company that built a network of corruption in 12 countries, who joined forces with the powerful private media in today's Ecuador. And on the other hand, there is the economic and financial power, for whom I am a stumbling block because I am progressive, because I represent a progressive political project. They all came together with the same great goal, to remove me from the vice presidency of the Republic. I would not be here if I was not the vice president.
Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has ordered the closure of the San Pedro Sula prison after transferring over 900 of the remaining inmates on Friday. The infamous 60-year-old institution, known as the University of Crime, was built for 800 inmates but became overcrowded with as many as 4,000 inmates. The closure of the prison was part of the government's plans to improve the prison system and the fight against crime. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has expressed concern over the repeated arrest and detention of Argentinian indigenous leader Milagro Sala. The IACHR also expressed its concern over the, quote, potential aggravation of the risk of harm it poses to her life and integrity. On Saturday, Sala's defense said that their client was kidnapped after she was sent back to jail after the measure that allowed her to move to house arrest was revoked by the Argentinian courts.
They kidnapped her. It's not necessary to put it another way. They kidnapped Milagro and transferred her to the prison of Alto Comedero.
In the province of El Chacao, in the north of Argentina, a 3-day women's meeting is coming to an end. More than 1,200 groups have been taking part in the 32nd Women's National Meeting, with more than 70,000 participants, the biggest so far. On Sunday, they marched from the National Northeast University to Democracy Park. They demanded the declaration of an emergency law against gender violence and the full application of the gender identity law, as well as quotas for transgender people.
We are here in El Chaco, Argentina, at the 32nd Women's Meeting, an event in Argentina that's been working to build collectively a force that allows us to keep discussing the issues that in the last 3 years have been very intense in Argentina and in all Latin America and the world. This has to do with the way that patriarchy is conditioning our lives in all senses. Not only do they murder us, but they also don't allow us the right to decide what we want to be, if we want to be mothers or not. And we don't have the right to have a legal, safe, and free abortion.
Gender violence has been on the rise in Brazil, but a new app aims to provide women with at least some protection from a culture steeped in sexism. It's called Femitaxi, and it's meant to allow women to travel in safety and comfort.
Gender violence has been on the rise in Brazil, but a new app aims to provide women with at least some protection from a culture steeped in machismo. It's called Femitaxi, and it's meant to allow women to travel in safety and comfort. In Sao Paulo alone, reports of attempted rape and sexual assault have risen by over 10% this last year, and regular taxis are one of the worst places for such crimes. Many women feel safer traveling with a female driver.
Separating men and women isn't a permanent solution. If we don't understand that we are different, we will always be separated. I think that the taxi is a tool to fight for space, to show my work, so I can be seen as a worker and not an object. When Femitaxi appeared, it provided me safety during a time when I didn't have the support of being seen as a worker. So we women are helping each other. We stand to show society that we can also do this job.
Femitaxi now has 1,000 drivers and provides more than 20,000 rides per month in 6 cities across the country. Founder Charles Henrique Calfat said he plans to expand into 2 more Brazilian cities in coming months, then Mexico and Argentina early next year.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. At least 27 people have been killed in northern and central Portugal as wildfires sweep through the region. More than 60,000 firefighters battled around 500 separate wildfires overnight. It is said to be the highest number of fires in more than 10 years. Portugal's government has declared a state of emergency and hinted that the fires may have been started deliberately. A further 3 people are reported to have died in neighboring northern Spain as the fire spread across the border. 64 people were killed last June in Portugal in a previous round of wildfires. And at least 276 people have been killed in twin bomb blasts in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. Hundreds more were wounded in Saturday's attack, the worst in the country's modern history.
At least 276 people have been killed in a twin bomb blast in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. Hundreds more were wounded in Saturday's attack, the worst in the country's modern history. 2 days after a truck bomb exploded in this busy area of the capital, the emergency services and relatives are still searching through the rubble for survivors or remains. The government has described the attack as a national disaster and have declared 3 days of mourning. Bulldozers have moved onto the site, where blood stains the tarmac. Locals have volunteered to help, but for some it's too much. Protesters gathered too. People want answers.
I have never seen a scene like this ever before. All the buildings around here have collapsed, and there were close to 200 people in these buildings. I hope they are fine.
The attack is being blamed on Al-Shabaab, a group which has been at war with Somalia's government for over a decade. The US relaunched an intensified counter-terrorism campaign earlier this year, under the command of the new Trump administration. Increased drone strikes and boots on the ground are seeking to quell the group's activities across the country. Telesource spoke exclusively with Somali activist Salah Dadao from the capital Mogadishu on whether he thinks the renewed campaign by the US is working.
The United States has been working and supporting the Somali government since the 9/11 attacks, and it is supporting included providing support to the security services, which is including training and equipment. Recently, the United States has been carrying out counter-terrorism actions against Al-Shabaab, which included drone attacks. Although there was some casualty to the civilian people. Given that, I think the recent United States policy towards Somalia, which increases more the U.S. Army to more directly involved in the conflict and not necessarily to discriminate the civilians from the militants. I think this will only increase the group's propaganda to recruit more youngsters. And in their effort to recruit more youngsters in the war against the government.
As Somalia struggles to come to terms with its latest tragedy, it is the people who are bearing the brunt of this war on terror. Many are asking if this is a winning strategy, or whether it will only fan the flames of war.
To continue our coverage of the regional elections in Venezuela and the results, our correspondent in Caracas, Reagan Devine, joins us on the phone now. Reagan, what a night you had.
Hi, Sonny, it's good to hear you. Listen, it's been a total celebration since as early as 7, 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning when I got a chance to witness the first voters, many of whom came out in groups of friends and family members, all together coming to exercise their right to vote and to democracy. It's important to say democracy because Venezuela is facing a lot of international pressure right now that is being turned on by local elements. So they've been singing these democratic chants since yesterday because as we all know by now that the leading CSTV party took away the vast majority of the states, and they now hold the vast majority of the governorships. They now hold 17 of 23 states. The opposition, MUD coalition, hold 5 states, that's 22, but there is one state, the state of Bolivar, that is still being worked out. There had been some issues yesterday, but those issues will be worked out and the results issued as soon as possible. But this reflects a very impressive win by the local by the government, especially since it was anticipated by so many avenues that they would not have won these regional elections because of the ongoing
economic situation here that they've been dealing with. The food shortages that you've heard of, the rising inflation, the issues that they've been dealing here have taken precedence over international media. And it's interesting, I have a quote here from the president of the Council of Electoral Experts. His name is Nikomar Moscoso. He said, the regional elections authentically reflected the will of the citizens. Now, this is important as well. We've been getting so much news from the opposition that the majority, 60%, then it was 70%, then it was 80% of Venezuelans are discontent with their lives here in Venezuela, with the work of the government. These regional elections show a vast contrast to that. Now, I have to say that while the opposition has been working so hard to discredit the government has been working for its people. Just last week, it distributed over 1,500,000 homes to the needy. It gave out grants to fishermen and farmers and those in fish farming, agriculture as well. It has been working consistently to improve the lives of its citizens. Right now, in the face of these election results, which is a magnificent win, we're hearing things on the ground of opposition, insurgents of what they plan on doing, what they hope to do. Yesterday they had said that they were going to start marching in the streets today. Well, today has been very quiet. We have not seen anything in the streets as yet. It may happen later on. Some are nervous to see what may come out of this, because once the opposition starts protesting, then their violent elements become involved. The guarimbas become involved, they're far right-wing followers, and then the violence ensues. And when the violence ensues, then the death toll may rise, and which is a great concern for all Venezuelans, not just ones on the left or the right. So while government members and the supporters have been celebrating a great win, they are also looking at what may come out of possible opposition consequences in the near future.
Thank you so much for that report, Reagan. It's really nice to see you. We've come to the end of this midday news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesiotv.net/English. And you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesio English, I am Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching. See you a little later.